For thousands of years, the face of war was pretty unmistakable, right? It was forged in blood and iron. But today, that face is fading. It's dissolving into this pulsating, almost invisible network of satellites, algorithms, and financial markets. Welcome to This Explainer. Think of this as a strategic briefing on how the very nature of conflict has become entirely indistinct. If you're a student of modern defense, understanding this new reality is absolutely crucial.
So, we're going to break this all down into 6 key areas. The war god's face, the blurring of our actual purpose for fighting, the rapidly expanding battlefield, who the new warriors actually are, the rise of non-military warfare, and finally, what it means to live in an era of omnipresent war.
All right, let's jump right into part 1, the hardware and software of conflict.
For millennia, war relied on a really distinct hard and fast formula. You had your hardware, which was the soldier, the weapon, and the physical battlefield. And running through all of that was your software, a very clear purpose. But as we apply a modern strategic lens, we're seeing that every single one of these traditional boundaries is completely breaking down.
Moving into our second section, why do we even fight anymore? The purpose itself is blurring.
The very motives for conflict have completely transformed over time. In ancient history, goals were incredibly simple. You fought a 10-year war for Helen of Troy or just to grab the piece of land next to you. Then, that evolved into carving up colonial influence, and later into the rigid, massive ideological clashes we saw in the 20th century. But today, all that clarity shatters. It turns into a chaotic blur of overlapping, highly complex national interests. In this environment, yesterday's adversary can easily be today's partner.
Let's look at the Gulf War as an impartial case study. On the surface, the declared aim was straightforward, restoring justice and international law. But beneath that high-sounding umbrella, there's a multitude of hidden, deeply complex self-interests. We're talking about securing oil lifelines, establishing a new world order, and maintaining a tight grip on regional influence. The why is never just one thing anymore.
Which brings us to part 3. If the purpose of war is expanding, where exactly are we fighting?
It's fascinating to track how the combat zone has morphed. It started as a single point, just close quarters, hand-to-hand combat. Then it stretched out into a line, like the massive, drawn-out trenches of the First World War. From there, it deepened into a whole area of operations, eventually lifting into full 3D space across the air, land, and sea. And now, it has leaped entirely out of the physical realm and into technological network space.
But weapons don't just expand battlefields on their own. Military thinkers do. Strategists actively innovated to stretch those front lines. You had Fuller conceptualizing tank warfare, Duhay pushing the limits with air power, Tukhachevsky pioneering deep operations, and Ludendorff conceptualizing the terrifying reality of total war.
And today's thinkers? They've pushed the battle map completely off the natural world. The futuristic theater of war targets satellite space, the extreme depths of the ocean, global cyber networks, the invisible electromagnetic spectrum, and even the very last refuge of the human race, our own psychological state.
Section 4. Let's talk about the new warriors. Who is actually pulling the trigger?
We are in the middle of a massive paradigm shift. For generations, we lived in the era of the muscle-bound industrial soldier, the traditional warrior of blood and iron. Actually, scratch that old image. Today, we're dealing with the digital fighter. This new warrior might be a scholar, a member of the tech elite, a financial speculator, or literally a 16-year-old hacker who can paralyze an entire defense system with just one keystroke.
Now, this dynamic creates a truly terrifying asymmetric advantage for defense planners to grapple with. Think of gigantic professional armies as dinosaurs. They're highly visible, bound by strict international rules, and they have to use limited proportional force. Meanwhile, agile, non-state actors, hackers, and terror networks, they act more like rodents. They have incredible survival skills, they observe zero rules, and they can fight an unlimited war using completely unconventional means.
So how exactly do we fight in this new paradigm? Let's dive into Section 5, non-military warfare.
If you look at the American perspective on future warfighting, the priorities have drastically shifted. We're talking information warfare, precision strikes, joint operations, and crucially, this concept of MOOT-W, military operations other than war. This is a huge shift. It officially brings activities like riot suppression, drug enforcement, and even disaster relief directly into the military toolkit.
But the analysis pushes this even further into pure non-military war operations. The core idea here is that human beings will now use every conceivable method, totally bypassing traditional arms, to attack adversaries and achieve their strategic goals. War is absolutely no longer just politics with bloodshed.
Just take a look at this new arsenal. Everyday, normal elements of society are transforming into devastating weapons of statecraft. Money? That becomes financial war. The computer is the engine of network war. News turns into media manipulation. Trade embargoes become economic war. Even altering precipitation patterns is being explored as ecological war.
To put the sheer destructive power of this into perspective, think back to the Asian financial crisis. International mobile capital, orchestrated by speculators, wiped out the economies of Southeast Asia, and it did so with the exact same level of devastation as a regional armed conflict. We're talking billions of dollars gone. Financial war is this perfectly concealed, hyper-strategic weapon that can literally collapse a social order without firing a single physical bullet.
Let's pull this all together in our final section, the omnipresent war and the disappearance of all boundaries.
The very definition of war has enlarged so much that it's now best described as a cocktail mixture. It's a blend of armed force and non-armed means, of military and non-military power, of casualties and non-casualties. It's a total, multi-dimensional assault, all combined to force an adversary to serve your interests.
Which brings us to the ultimate, unavoidable strategic question of this briefing. If a lethal attack that can doom an entire nation can be launched quietly from a teenager's bedroom or from the middle of a bustling stock exchange floor, where exactly is the battlefield today?
The inescapable answer is that the Earth itself is the battlefield. Because mankind is now endowing virtually every single space with strategic significance, war has become completely omnipresent. It's limitless. There is literally no non-battle space left.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final crucial reality. In a modern era where the war god's face has become completely indistinct, relying solely on traditional troops and tanks is a guaranteed recipe for defeat. Future victory belongs not only to those with weapons, but to those who truly understand every single dimension of power. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, are we actually prepared to defend ourselves across every spectrum of human endeavor? Thank you for joining this briefing.